Podcast, a podcast about the game of life and the hero's journey we all experience. Let's jump in with our host, Dylan Watkins, as he introduces today's guest.
Are you interested on how you can use cutting-edge technology like virtual reality for spiritual practices and mindfulness? Well, in today's podcast, I have Nicole. He thrives at the intersection of spirituality and technology, a lifelong spiritual adventurer and entrepreneur. After graduating school in Berkeley, California, and jobs in the tech world, Jeremy was ordained by the Unitarian Universalist Association and served 7 years as a spiritual leader of Mission Peak UU congregation in interfaith spiritual community in Silicon Valley. He left in 2016 to launch EvolVR. EvolVR is a secular spiritual community that is creating personal growth experiences in virtual and augmented reality. In January of 2022, EvolVR was acquired by TRIPP, where Jeremy continues to lead communities as the VP of Community and Live Events. When unplugged from his ministry, Jeremy enjoys spending time exploring the great outdoors of his newly adopted state of Colorado, and his wife, Nicole, a UCC minister, and daughter, Eliza. Maybe I said that wrong, but without any further delay, I'd like to welcome Jeremy.
All right. Good to be
here.
Hey,
brothers.
The mountain's right behind me. So you can
I love it. How do I see your daughter's name again?
She's Eliza.
Eliza. Okay, cool. I want to make sure I got that right. Beautiful. Beautiful. Yeah, man. I can tell you got while you're in Colorado, you have a virtual background. Is that the actual mountainous background taken in some local mountainscape?
That's right. I live in Boulder, Colorado, and we have these incredible kind of foothills of the Rockies. I grew up in New England, and they all seem like mountains out here to me, but people call these foothills. But they're super tall and imposing and impressive to me. The ones right behind me in this pic are called the Flat Irons. And yeah, they're right behind my house. We get up there regularly.
That's awesome. What caused you to move to Colorado?
Been in the Bay Area for most of the last 20 years before we got out here. Mm-hmm. It was a great place. I did grad school there and served the community, as you mentioned, and started my company. You know, I guess there's a couple things. One is I'm not the only person who discovered how great it was to live in the Bay Area over the last 2 decades. So it was just getting full. Everywhere we went that used to be, a little bit full was now crazy full. Traffic was a nightmare. And I remember clearly, it must have been like probably early 2016, I heard a news report that was like 680 will have 50% more cars on it by 2030. And it just broke something inside of me to think of even more cars, like 50%. Where will they even go? So we started looking at other options.
That's cool, man. Yeah. Colorado seems to be a good spot where like you probably have a nice balance between nature and also like high tech community people doing cool stuff.
Yep,
yeah,
absolutely right.
That's super cool. That's super cool, man. And for like, I mean, you talked about the living at like the intersection of spirituality and technology, right? So like, what for you, like, what's the passion around that? Like, what is the genesis that causes you to want to live at that intersection?
2 early loves of my life. Like we have themes that we develop at young ages of interest. And from a super young age, I mean, 8 years old, I was asking these big questions like, what happens when we die? I mean, everyone does. I don't mean I was special for that, but I was more interested in them. And I was raised in a really interfaith home where my questions were just met with more resources, really, not answers. So spiritually, I've just always been really curious. And at a young age, decided like I wasn't looking to become a Christian or a Buddhist or a Muslim, but to just be on a spiritual adventure for as long as I could be. And to me, that means meeting people and talking to them and non-judgmentally hearing their thoughts and going to places where people practice rituals and where spiritual community exists and just observing and taking in what's special about that for the people who make it up. And then the tech side, my parents ran a video company in the 80s when I was a little kid, and then a computer company in the 90s when I was kind of more of a teenager. So I was always surrounded by the latest tech stuff. I was always playing with computers and video cameras and, making games and movies with my friends. And so those were just 2 themes, that have been there for a long time. And I think it's natural for us to want to find integration with stuff like that. So how could I bring those things together? What would it look like for technology to inspire my spiritual path and for spirituality to affect, how I think about technology. And I just found the more I dove into that space, the more it felt like, yep, this is home.
Beautiful. That's beautiful. Yeah, it's cool to find those intersections that happen. It really kind of step you into an area that you can, especially create a community. It's something that it's not a lot of people when they think about community, what they really mean is customers.
Yes.
Right? They just kind of show up and they do that and they're like, why, and they kind of blitz things and that's it. Right. And so for you, you've been on this grind for, 2016, so like building up a community and shows the passion there. And this is, I believe, one of the larger spiritual communities. Do you want to talk to me just a little bit about the evolution of EvolVR?
Yeah, sure. So my brother-in-law is a tech guy, and he was working on a VR project, and he lives up in Seattle. He needed someone to host demos for him in the Bay Area where I lived, where I literally was just putting people into headsets and, pressing go and then letting him take over the demo. And that was my first encounter with this next generation of VR. And it was like early 2016, late 2015, just the first beta testing equipment for what would become this new generation of HTC Vive really was the thing we were playing with. And I saw the same thing happen over and over again in these demos. People who had been to a VR demo a dozen times over the previous 20 years and found it not quite ready suddenly saw that this new generation of tech was really there. And they said the same thing at the end of every demo. It was like I was with him, talking about my brother-in-law up in Seattle. It was like I was there with him. It was like we were in the same room. And for me, that's kind of the magic words for spiritual community. It's one thing for you and I to be talking to each other on this really great piece of technology, streaming video. I can see your face and, your smile and really hear the little intonations in your voice. But there is something different about feeling like my body and your body are in the same physical space. It creates an intimacy. It creates a shared presence that I think in virtual reality, with the equipment being as good as it is now, our mind believes is as real as whatever you want to call this reality, physical reality. And so when I saw that happening over and over again, I finally put together, maybe this was the space I was looking for, because I was at the time leading a Unitarian Universalist congregation in the Bay Area, which is this really progressive spiritual community, but it still had limitations that were feeling like they were holding me back from the people I really wanted to be serving. And when I saw this new space where potentially people could meet up bodily around the world, and that we could create spaces that didn't have to worry about physics, where we could create new kinds of tools around meditation, I got really excited. And so I just started leading meditations in AltSpace VR. Just whenever I wanted to. I didn't have anything scheduled. I'd just pop in and say, in 5 minutes, I'm going to start leading this meditation. And they were really popular. People didn't really know why they were doing VR in 2016, although I assume they wanted to play video games. And they would also find that they could meditate there. And I think everyone in the world knows they should be meditating at this point, but it's kind of hard if you're not. I mean, there's some people who are really wired for it, but I think most people find starting a meditation practice really difficult. And they might even do it for a week or two and feel great about it and then quickly lose that momentum and fall away from it. But I found quickly, because it was just me at the time, that because people were being social in these VR spaces as well, they each had an avatar. I had an avatar. We thought we were there together in real life. We could get them there for more reasons than just they thought they should meditate. They would come because they wanted to see their friends again. They would come because our spaces were gorgeous. And then they would meditate since they were there already. And I could see pretty quickly I was onto something, that meditation in virtual reality was going to be a big thing. And, as I talked about a little bit earlier, the thing that I love in life is meeting people with the resources they need to grow in the next step that's right for them. And meditation is one of the most powerful personal growth tools there is, I think. And so it became obvious to me this could be a real venue for sharing meditation with a ton of people who will never find it otherwise. So that was kind of the genesis.
That's beautiful. Yeah, I mean, meditation is one of those universal things that, like, if everybody meditated, it can be that the power of like focus and the power of being awareness and mindful. Like, we kind of live in the attention economy right now, and
Yes.
so we are getting those instant gratification, social media and all that jazz. So the fact that you have this meditation, which is like the opposite,
Mhm.
it sounds wonderful. Now, when you're talking about the guiding them through meditations, and can you just talk me through a little bit? Are you actually verbally guiding them through it? Do you like set a timer in there? Are they all like in the same virtual room together as you go through? Can you talk me just a little bit about the process?
Yeah. So over time, we've evolved a ton of different options for people who come to our VR spaces. So I
Mhm.
could pretty much say yes to all those things, but I'll give you some real little windows into what we're doing.
Yeah.
We have 14 people other than myself who lead meditation sessions for
Mhm.
us. They're meditation trained experts from around the world. And so you will go into, so I should say, we're EvolVR. We do live events. We're a
Mhm.
part of the TRIPP community. The
Mhm.
TRIPP app does solo events. So you end up in the TRIPP app in lush, extremely graphic rich, really beautiful solo environment. What
Mhm.
my team focuses on is creating spaces in existing VR platforms like AltSpace VR or VR Chat or Rec Room or Horizons. And we build a world in there and lead live meditations. And so, we'll get dozens of people, hundreds of people to show up live at these meditation sessions. Some of them are led very traditionally. You're sitting on the ground in a posture. A meditation teacher is verbally leading you through a meditation for 20 minutes. We'll do a check-in beforehand where people can kind of share where they're at, and a check-in afterwards where people can really share maybe some questions that the experience raised for them or observations. So that's one kind. We
Mhm.
also have meditation spaces we've created where we can do meditations that aren't traditional and are very impossible in real life. For instance, um, you may have heard of the overview effect, which is what happens to astronauts of any flavor from any country who go up to outer space and they see the Earth from
Mhm.
above, and it literally like paradigm shifts their brain instantly, like it rewires them cognitively to see the world in a much more unified, connected way. It's really a beautiful thing that I think everyone needs.
Mhm.
And so we built an experience in virtual reality where whoever shows up at the beginning starts out on the ground, the ground of planet Earth, it looks like, together. And
Mhm.
then with some guided voice meditation as well, but mostly not, they slowly float up through the 20-minute meditation until by the end, they're looking down at outer space, from outer space down at planet Earth together, a gorgeous Earth slowly rotating in front of them with no borders between countries. And so we try to really simulate the overview effect. And,
Mhm.
you know, if going up to outer space for real and floating in zero gravity is 100% experience of the overview effect, I think we give them like a whole lot of that, 80% of that. I mean, they don't have the weightlessness, but the way people react to that meditation experience is transformational. They
Mhm.
really get some part of that brain rewiring experience when they see the earth from above in that meditation. So we have those kinds of sessions. We do yoga.
Yeah.
You look like you have a question.
Yeah, the question about that, which I think is interesting, is that so generally speaking, people when you meditate with your eyes closed. But in
Right.
these other sessions, when you're doing this group thinking, there and you're if you're all in the room together, so you're meditating, but you can see everybody inside the like as it for example, is it like let's just say there's 20 people. Do you see 20 people floating into the air?
Yep.
And then you're all floating into the sky, and you look around. Is that what's going on around you?
You got it. Yep. And
Okay.
I'll also say Buddha, the guy
Yeah.
who is pretty well known and connected to meditation, often led meditations with eye open. So it's kind of a newer conceit that meditation is always with its eyes closed. That's how
Mhm.
we picture it in the Western world, but
Mhm.
it's only one form of a really diverse set of ways that you can meditate. And we do some closed eye meditations and we do some open eye meditations.
How does the yoga work? Because you can only have, you can see the hands, you can see the heads, but you can't really see the feet. So
We bring our yoga instructors in as a hologram, a live hologram. So
oh,
you can see their entire body.
huh.
We're continuing to innovate, right? So we are like, what can we do right now as best we can, and how can we keep building to better? And so we wanted to get a minimum viable product version of VR yoga going so that we could continue to learn and iterate as we went. So yeah, currently our meditation and our yoga instructor appears as a giant hologram. It's pretty cool, actually. And then, yes, as you said, all the rest of the attendees are avatars who often don't have legs. It's hard to do, like in a normal yoga class, the instructor might come around and like assist you to get your leg in the right position or something. That's not going to happen. Also, we generally do chair yoga because without pass through, it's a little dangerous to have people doing, bless you, gesundheit, salute.
Thank you.
So yeah, we do a very modified yoga program at this point, but it's all about, learning for the future as we continue to build.
Beautiful. Okay, yeah, and that's the thing is like the VR is, for a while, has been a perpetual game of like almost good enough, right? And now it's it's good enough, but people are like, well, it needs to be photorealistic, and you need to have the whole body in there. It need to be, your brain needs to be plugged into the matrix. Well, no, you can get massive benefits from it. Do you want to talk, speaking of that, like some of the benefits some of the people get from going through these meditations and going through the program, some of the anecdotal or anything that you have that you can speak to of some stories about the benefits?
Endlessly. I could.
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, we're living through a mental health crisis in the world right now.
Mhm.
I think most people are aware of that. Like, people are more anxious and depressed than they ever have been in at least recorded psychological human history. And I bet pretty close to any nadir that we've experienced previously. So we, especially during the pandemic, when that was even more the case, when people were already depressed and anxious and then locked up, oftentimes alone for weeks and months, VR exploded in general as a use case. And meditation was really what people needed in that moment. So we had, our sessions doubled and tripled over the pandemic regularly. And we heard from people often who just said, this is my only social right now, coming here to meet with people. This is my only anxiety medication I'm taking right now, meditating with you. And so, I believe that thousands of people during the pandemic were joining us regularly for the only thing that was connecting them to other human beings and connecting themselves to their own center in that way that could maybe dissolve some of that anxiety. But that's like the tip of the iceberg, because people who have social anxiety, sometimes VR magnifies that for them, but oftentimes it doesn't. It becomes a really safe place for them to explore. And our sessions end up being like, when someone shows up in VR for the first time and they have some social anxiety and they don't know what to do, and they see a meditation session, they're like, well, I bet I won't meet a lot of trolls there, at least, So it ends up being a really safe place for people to be in general and start their VR journey. We have countless stories of people who have met loves in our community, people who have overcome depression, people who have gone through the loss of spouses, through divorces. We have so we do the meditation and yoga. We also have other sessions, like one called Death Q&A. That's probably our most popular, where people just come to talk about death. There's not a lot of places in Western society where that's okay to do. And we don't like make fantastical claims that we know what happens when you die, but we do make real claims about what we know about the process of death physically in the body, about grieving. And we let people just talk about their own stories and process together what's going on with them. And so, literally thousands and thousands of people have been through those sessions, processing deaths of loved ones, upcoming deaths of their own. We have had people die with us. So yeah, it's amazing.
1 second. When you say you've had people die with you, can you please elaborate? Like, can you please just elaborate on that?
Yeah. So people have found us when they were in an end of life situation. multiple times, and we were an extremely important resource as they moved through those final days, weeks, months in some cases. There was one person who was literally in VR goggles with members of our community as they took their last breaths. So, we have all those, I told you before, I led a real life physical reality congregation. There's even more vulnerability in virtual reality. And so there's even more grieving and real processing and connecting that we've been able to do in VR than I ever could in real life, or physical reality, as I keep trying to call it.
That's crazy. I mean, it's also, and what a very powerful, and what a responsibility, and also like a bit of a, it's a very special moment. It's sad, but it's also, if someone's choosing to spend their last moments, that's the last thing that they get to do, and they spend it with you. That it says a lot about you and the community and everything that you've put together. How do you, because you said it and it made me think about it, the internet is full of trolls, and people do come in to everywhere, Zoom bombs and everything else. How do you manage any types of trolling or any of that activity inside of these social environments?
It's a really real thing for us. No one ever goes into a physical reality meditation studio and starts saying the N-word as loud as they can while people are meditating, but you better believe it happens to us and worse. It's just incredible, the kind of trolling that some people get off on. So there's a number of things. There are technical ways that we have, built tools to deal with that. And some of the VR platforms do a great job of giving you moderation tools. We do a lot of our events in AltSpace VR because they have some of the best moderating tools in virtual reality. So we can mute people and kick them out really quickly. We have a very well-resourced group of moderators so we have live moderators in all of our sessions who aren't the session leaders, not the people who are leading, but who are just there to make sure that the space is safe, because that really matters for our people. But also, I would say our session leaders are pretty amazing at turning, some trolls are just trolls, and they are just like, they woke up on the wrong side of the bed and they want to make other people miserable. But I think most people, they want to not be a troll. They really do. And they don't know how to be better. A lot of them are 14-year-old boys from somewhere in the UK or the US. But, our session leaders have learned how to pull more than half of these trolls into relationship with our community. They'll come and they'll be a pain and we'll say like, hey, what's going on with you that you want to come here and do this, instead of just giving them what they thought they wanted with, a freak out response. And we're able to, in many times, diffuse the situation and even get the person to meditate with us. So that is what we consider the biggest win, is like, if you can transform a troll experience into now a meditator, like, that session leader will go to sleep pretty well that night,
Yeah, man, that's a beautiful gift. If you could do that to a lot of the different trolls that come through, because you're right, a lot of them are young and fired up, and they've got just a lot of pain going on inside of them, and being able to handle that versus, screaming or trying to, there's a lot of probably non-constructive ways to handle that situation. That's beautiful that you guys are able to do that. I was curious about that, and you said that. So there's the tools, the moderation tools. There's also the moderators who can kind of have that discourse with them. What about in terms of intention setting or things that you do as a general community guideline, so people know how to operate, values, decorum, things like that? How do you get people into the right mindset when they step into this?
So anytime you walk into one of our spaces, the first thing you're going to see is one of those lawn signs that have become ubiquitous in the United States that say, in this house, we believe science is real, women's rights are human rights, Black Lives Matter, etc. And so I put that in there in all of our spaces, because someone asked me once, like, how do I know what the values are of this community that I'm trusting with my vulnerable self? And I'm a crazy progressive liberal, and I'm 100% unapologetic about that. And it's really important that the community I lead is welcoming to everyone, We do draw a line, of course, at people who feel the need to disrespect other people for no reason. So as long as you're willing to come there and respect people, we really try to meet you as you are and be open to hearing your story, sharing our story with you, and growing with you. But I think having those words just like right immediately in front of people as they enter our space helps just signal to people, this is a safe space for everyone, as long as you're willing to be respectful. So, I think it's technology and it's culture. Like we have a long history of culture now at EvolVR because we've existed for 5 or 6 years. So people have been around long enough that they seed that culture to those who come after them. And if you come into one of our spaces now for a meditation session, there's a good chance that 2/3 of the people in that room have been to dozens, if not hundreds of other of our sessions. And so they help. It's like when you have a whole lot of healthy people in a room, it's a lot harder to be toxic. It's one of the things we learn in spiritual community is like you don't beat toxic people, you surround them with health, and you just make it so they can't be toxic. And we have so many incredible healthy people in our community that it makes it really hard to be toxic around them.
That's beautiful, and that's very insightful in that area. You have that, I would say, positive social pressure going on in that direction.
I think that's
like,
right.
Hey, man, yeah.
We will try to love you. We will really try to love you. Like that's what we want to do.
I'm gonna love the hate out of you.
Right? We'll try as hard as we can.
That's beautiful. I mean, I'm sure along the way, I think growing communities can be a challenge, from, you've done it for a number of years and you've done these things again and again and again. Can you talk about some of what I call, because it's the Hero's Journeys podcast, there's threshold guardians. There's things that kick the crap out of you along the way, right? As a general challenge for growth and transformation. Can you talk to me about some of what I'd call threshold guardians or challenges you faced throughout the years as you've been evolving EvolVR?
Well, I mean, it sounded kind of ridiculous to everyone at first, that you were going to put a hot brick on your face to facilitate meditation. And so I think there was a very real barrier of just like, this is a dumb idea, Jeremy, and the only way to get people through that is to have them experience it themselves. There's no way to convince someone that putting a set of virtual reality goggles on their face is actually the missing ingredient to their meditation journey, but it really is. I think, the Buddha, to go back to that awesome guy, he was trying to solve a different problem than I am, and that I think a lot of people are. He was trying to stop being born and help people stop being born because he believed that you accrued karma through your lifetime and that you would continue to be reborn in ways that maybe you didn't want to be. And meditation was a path for him to stop that cycle. For me, I don't know if I'm reborn or not. I have no data along those lines, but I'm pretty sure I'm really alive right now, and that I'm alive during a time in human history that is like crazy anxiety producing. We have like exquisitely designed planet Earth to like make us feel as anxious as possible. So we know exactly all the bad stuff that's happening to everyone in all the places all the time, coming at us through constant breaking news, beeping and flashing at us so we won't miss it. And so the problem I'm trying to solve is like, how do you help people stay less anxious just daily, And I think meditation is an extremely powerful tool for that. And so, a hot brick on your face may seem like an impediment for a minute, but anyone who gets into virtual reality finds out quickly that it's such a powerful thing you experience in there that you forget about the goggles in minutes and are just there. And so then what can we do with you when you're there? We can use that new reality to create meditation experiences that have never been able to be experienced by humanity before. So we got over that first one, I think, pretty quickly.
Yeah. And that's usually because people haven't tried it yet, right? That's one of those that someone said this, I've never met a critic of VR who's actually tried VR, and like once you try it, you're like, oh, okay. Mind's blown. Yeah, mind's blown. So that totally makes sense to me, especially a lot of people that are resistant to it. So you're just like, okay, just put this on, I'll go through it. And so now that people sort of adapt to it, and it goes from the crazy area to prolific right? And so you're shifting into that area.
Right.
So what was the next threshold guarding that you faced along the path?
Well, I think just when we talk about meditation with people who really are in that world, they would say, well, don't the goggles like create another thing in between you and your center? It's like, can't you just go to your breath? Why do you have to put another thing in between you that will then tell you to go to your breath? And I think that's a fair critique for some people. I also think that, again, we're living in a time when if you're under 50, your life is pretty gamified. If you're under 60, your life has been pretty gamified. You're probably using digital technologies frequently. You have a lot of screens in your life. And so we're trying to adapt to what's happening. You know, people are used to screens. People are used to gamified everythings. So how can we then, instead of have that be an impediment that's making people more anxious, turn it into a tool that can help build some of those muscles that we need? And so I saw an interview with someone who was talking about TRIPP recently, and they said, you know, what's going to happen when you're like in line at the bank and you're super frustrated with how slow it's going and you don't have your goggles with you to remind you to be patient? Well, that's just a straw man, because you know, you don't have any, the whole point is like you're off center and you need to find the way to get back center, and it's internal muscles that you'll carry with you everywhere that you're building in the TRIPP app, in the EvolVR sessions, just like you are if you're sitting on your meditation cushion in your room doing a meditation. So you're building the same muscles. You're using a different tool to build those muscles, but they come with you everywhere you go. And, you know, we have thousands of testimonies from people who have built those muscles from TRIPP and EvolVR who had never been able to before, who had lots of failed attempts at creating meditation practices. So that's another one that I think we just had to get through by continuing to show people, you know, the actual end results of what was happening. TRIPP is a data-driven company. You know, we really stay away from the woo-woo type of meditation stuff, some of which has value, but isn't what we are focused on, because we really want to be able to say, like, we have studied this scientifically and we can see the data that shows what it does for people. And that's really important to us. So we have that data. You know, we have worked with doctors and scientists who have used our apps to really see what it does for people, and it absolutely builds those muscles for them.
That's awesome. Do you know any of those data stats offhand?
I should, if I'm going to say them out loud.
Yeah. Well, no, it's okay. I don't mean to call you spot. Like, it's, you know, and again, we didn't talk about this ahead of time, but if you had it, it'd be interesting, because you said, you know, you're data driven, you've got all the data there. And I know sometimes it's just, you know, it's a flashcard.
I don't know them well enough to say them with enough assurance that I'm not saying them wrong.
Which is 80% certain, you're 100% certain. Yeah, no, that's no, it's all good. It's all good. Okay, so I mean, and that makes a lot of sense, because you know, the difference, I guess, because you're talking about the woo-woo side versus the other side. You're talking about, like, does this not just say we help people? You actually know with science and with data and with analytics to say that you actually can in fact actually help people, right? Have you seen how many times or how often people have to go to be able to see some sort of impact, some sort of effect? Do you know, like, what that looks like to see some sort of measurement?
It's something we understand pretty well. I think that people start to really see an impact in their life after 30 days. That's the real truth. And I think that can be a frustrating truth for some people to hear. They really want to believe that it happens quicker. I think that it can have an immediate impact the first time you meditate, period, with us or not. But in terms of a sustainable change to your brain wiring in a way that will really start to feed you, I think once you're outside of a month of daily practice, even 5 minutes, you'll start to really have something that's going to be with you for some time. So yeah, I think 30 days is a really good way for people to start thinking in their head about a new practice.
That's good. Yeah. It's just good for people to know. It's like, well, how do I have to, do I have to meditate for years to get this benefit in this way? Or, you know, what does that look like? So, what do you think also, like, are some, you know, common misconceptions about either meditating inside virtual reality or spirituality inside of virtual reality?
So I had a misconception that I think a lot of people have, which is that people will be fake in virtual reality. And I'll tell you why I thought that. Hey, you go in there and you build an avatar to look like whatever you want. No one really knows who you are. There's this amazing anonymity. So like VR chat, which is I think the most popular social VR app still, you can literally make your avatar look like anything you want. It could be an idealized version of your real life self. It could be a famous person. It could be something that has nothing to do with a human body. You could be a car, you unfortunately could also be a swastika or something like that.
Yeah.
And so, I think, sorry, what was the exact question? I was going to go in a bunch of different
questions. I know the whole swastika thing. You're like, oh, you just probably open up Pandora's box of thoughts around that concept. You're like, oh God. No, common misconceptions about meditation and spiritualism inside virtual reality.
So I thought because of all that, people would show up and be totally fake. And I'm sure that does happen to some degree, but I realized really quickly that it's 100% the opposite. So like I said, I ran a real life spiritual community, and I know the people who came were amazing people. I loved them deeply, and they would be a little fake when they showed up, because that's how we are in public life. You're supposed to say that you're okay and you're happy and things are good, but usually they're not all those things, right? And even in our spiritual community in real life, people would come and say, hey, everything's great, and then go home and cry or whatever. And in virtual reality, there's this really heady mix of anonymity and reality. So the anonymity is obvious. I covered that. The reality is you are there. Your brain feels like your body is there in this avatar form that you created, whether it's a car or a person who looks like you or not. You feel like that thing is representing you physically in that space, and that other people are physically in that space. But you're not going to see them at school or work or the grocery store. Again, back to the anonymity. And so I mentioned earlier at our sessions, we do a check-in and a check-out. People will say things in there that they have not said to their lover, to their best friend, to their parent, that they're not ready to say to the world yet. But there's something about that mix of anonymity and reality that allows them to feel like there are people listening to me who care about me, but I'm not going to have to deal with all the implications of saying this that I would if I said it, stood up in church and said it or something. And so people are more real in virtual reality than they are in physical reality immediately. And if you talk about an important ingredient for spiritual community, the more people are authentic and vulnerable with each other, like that's where the growth comes, right? If you come and say everything's great, like there's not a lot of growth in that. But if you come and say like, gosh, I have been broken by this week, I am hurting and I need you to meet me there. And then, hey, we can talk and we can be real and we can share resources and we can support each other in ways that matters to our body, mind, and soul. So that was something that really quickly, when I was just leading those first meditation sessions in Alt Space, again, I was like, all these people are fake. I don't want to take this too seriously. I'm just leading meditations. And then again and again and again, I would fall into the deepest, most meaningful conversations I had ever had. That death Q&A session, if you go and visit that session sometime, you'll be like, I've never seen people talk to each other like this. Where has this been my whole life? And so it turned what I assumed was going to be a negative in terms of trying to make community in virtual reality into as big a positive as it could be.
That's incredible. And I mean, you're right. There's this, humans are interesting. We're very weird creatures.
Yes.
Like we want to have, we want to be autonomous and an individual, but we very deeply want to be accepted by the community.
Yes.
Right. And we crave authenticity, but we also fear judgment. Right. And so it's a very challenging place to try to find that fine line. The death Q&A sounds incredible, and also, very emotionally expansive, and put it that way. What do you do? You talk about these deep conversations, right? And besides the death Q&A, which sounds amazing. What do you do to create that psychological safety, right? What are the things that you do? What questions do you prompt? How do you, in fact, how do you curate the space for people to open up to create that communication?
So amazingly, a lot of it is just a naturally occurring element of virtual reality. But of course, we have tried to figure out how can we, stimulate it as best we can and make it feel, as safe as it could possibly be to be vulnerable. I think part of it is, we don't just throw anyone out there to lead our events. They are all people who've gone through a huge amount of training as meditation instructors, as small group leaders, etc. So they know how to make people feel safe. They understand the verbal cues and the ways to really just welcome people into a space that is safe. And I mentioned that culture. You don't that's something you have to build over years and years of showing up in the same places at the same times and not ever pulling the rug out of underneath people's feet, and really anytime they say something, meeting it with non-judgmental love. And over time, it builds into this trust, and it builds into a trust that I think people can palpably feel even if they come for the first time years after that started. Because there's, like I said, this cultural way that people act in our events that's so healthy. It communicates to people like, this doesn't happen in every space, so this must be something that is okay here. This must be how this place is. We've also learned how to design our spaces in ways that are inviting and welcoming. So just a few little examples. One is putting that lawn sign in front that I mentioned before, so that as soon as they walk in, they get a sense of our values. A small one that ends up, I think, being pretty big for us is, like you said, people are funny creatures. And like, if I walk into any classroom since I was 8 years old until today, I'll always gravitate to the back left corner of the classroom. That's just that's physically where I go in a classroom. Yeah. That's where I feel safe. If I go into a VR environment, that's also where I'll naturally gravitate to that back left corner. And people come into VR very spatially aware and aware of how close people are to them. And in the Western world, we assume a lot of physical space around us. Our cars are big, our houses are big. And when you're in VR, if someone's right up next to you, it feels uncomfortable, just like it feels uncomfortable in real life. And so we built our spaces with designed platforms that are just big enough, just a little bit bigger than one avatar body. And so it just automatically, instead of us having to say over and over again in the event, make sure you're not too close to people, there's just these little platforms that you get on, and it's clear there's not space for another person. So that's your platform. And then there's not another one for a little bit of ways. And it just automatically grants people that space. And people who didn't even realize consciously that they were feeling uncomfortable because people were near them suddenly feel much more comfortable unconsciously than they don't even know why. So, spending time paying attention to our spaces that we're creating and how to design them to make them feel comfortable. Just even little things like the spawn point shouldn't be anywhere near where the event happens. We're meditating. So if you drop into the event 10 minutes after it starts and you pop right in near where the meditation's happening, you might be talking, you might be coughing, whatever. So, we've just learned over the years really how to design spaces that facilitate what we're trying to do.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I didn't think about that. When you come into it, like there's like a safe area that people come in, they creep into the back, or the people in the back. I'm thinking events in like real life.
Yep.
I was at like a men's retreat this weekend. My voice is gone because of it, right? So, but I saw certain people that come in, and they would go in, and they go to the back corner, right? Especially if you come in late, right? Yep. You come in, you creep the corner, and he's like, okay, I'm in. I can quietly be a part of the group now and start to participate and engage. So, and that makes a lot of sense. And so that,
we have a world designer I work with. I'm not able to do that. I just want to give him all the credit in the world. His name is Alan Chow. I've been working with him for 4 or 5 years now, and he's a genius at seeing a space and in his mind, and then bringing it to life in virtual reality in a way that I think communicates that spaceness to people, but also safety and home and all these other things. So Alan Chow is our just a genius world designer, and I feel so lucky to work with him.
Oh, that's awesome. Thanks, Alan. Appreciate you, buddy.
You bet.
That's awesome. What advice? I mean, these are very helpful things. I mean, what advice would you give to people that are looking to build communities inside of virtual reality? You know, it could be spiritual, it could be whatever.
Yeah.
You know, but what do
Yeah.
you think? What are some things that? What advice would you say to them?
Stop thinking about it and start doing it. I mean, like, you just need to start getting in there and starting events. It's really just like how you start everything. You throw what you know at the wall and see what sticks, and don't be afraid to say you were wrong, and keep reiterating and asking the people who do show up why they did, and the people who left quickly why they did, and be humble about really hearing their responses. You know, for me, I needed EvolVR and I didn't have it. I needed a place where people who were searchers, who weren't trying to be a Christian or a Buddhist or a Muslim, could find each other and grow together. And so I created this. So what is your need? What is your deep passion that you are not alone in, that you could start giving birth to in virtual reality? And it's a good time to do it. I mean, it was an even better time, it turned out, 5 years ago when I did it, just because not a lot of people were, but still it's early. It's still just past the Wild West phase where there's probably not someone doing the thing you're doing in your mind yet. You know, take that out of your mind and bring it into virtual reality, and be the first person to do it. Be the first person to start building that community, and that's enough to start your momentum. But the real thing is, you got to be consistent and you got to be committed for the long haul. I spent more than a year in events where there were 2 or 3 people. I spent plenty of afternoons in events with one, or hoping someone was going to show up. And you stick to it, and you do it at the same times in the same places for long enough, and suddenly there's 12 and 20 and 100 and 1,000. I mean, it suddenly just starts to pick up. But you got to really be committed to it for the long haul.
Yeah, it's a diet and exercise.
I mean, you know, if you're starting this podcast, right? How many people listen to your first podcast versus listen to, you know, your last one?
Yeah, for sure.
You keep showing up and doing awesome stuff, and people are going to notice.
Yeah, man. Two a week, almost every week for 2 years. So
that's it.
You know, and that's it. But people don't want that. They want the hack. Give me the hack. Can I take a pill? I don't want to meditate. Give me the pill.
Give me $10 million. I will give you the hack.
There you go.
No, I mean, unfortunately, I think it's just that, like, you just got to find that passion in yourself and just keep showing up for it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, it's great advice. And it's also things that people, you know, they want to know, you know, and people are always unconsciously looking for permission to go take that leap into the unknown. And so it's good advice to actually give them, for people to know. It's like, headsets are so cheap. Like, you know, back in my day, you know, when we had I used to, you know, I'm one of the original backers of Kickstarter, right? VR headsets, stuff like that. It was like $3,000 for a Vive and for a $2,000 PC. And now it's like $300 on Amazon, to your house in 24 hours, and just boop, you're out the door, ready, set, go. You know, it's a very beautiful, wonderful time to get into it. And it's only getting bigger. So I completely agree with you. With all of this that you're doing, right? Along the journey, right? I mean, you've been doing this for a number of years, right? Recently acquired with TRIPP, which is awesome. It's a great, you know, peanut butter jelly sandwich thing going on there, which is beautiful. For you, what's your holy grail with all of this? What's your flag in the sand? You know, what do you hope to achieve?
I mean, I think the same thing I've wanted to achieve for a long time, which is, like, when I die, feeling like I spent a lot of my energy helping people grow, you know, helping people to become the person that they want to be. And I got to be honest, it's a selfish pursuit. I'm trying to do that myself. And it helps me to grow, to help other people to grow. I learn from other people. I need fellow travelers. I need, you know, more resources and all that too. So, you know, if TRIPP is this incredible vehicle where we have, you know, I don't know the exact numbers right now, but, you know, well over 100,000 people on a monthly basis using our app. And that's amazing. You know, like, I think that we know some stuff about the human experience that can be really helpful that a lot of people don't know. You know, meditation is free. You don't even need, like, once you spend some time in TRIPP, like, you can take it out of TRIPP and it's with you, you know, always. People want to sell you endless pills or, new workouts or whatever, you got all the tools you need. And so, my whole thing in life is, how do we make a community where anyone can show up and they'll be met non-judgmentally by the other people that are already there, and they will show them new resources. They will listen to them and learn from them as well. How can we keep doing that bigger? And so I think I found just about the best vehicle I could for where I'm at now with TRIPP to do that.
Yeah, no, so, and I love it. That's so beautiful. And I completely resonate with that, because this whole like Heroes of Reality podcast, right, is understanding people's lesson stories and insights to help, the listener be the hero of their own story. And, in self-study school, I learned and grow along the way. I learned amazing lessons and insights, and it's cool. And people listen to it well along the way, and they grow along the way. So I think that's beautiful. Like, it's that, what do you call that? Enlightened self-interest kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're helping other people. It helps you, and everybody wins together, which is beautiful.
Yes.
If that's the goal, right, which is like for your personal growth, and help a whole bunch of people along the way to help them grow, and to make it as big, as impactful as possible. Like, what's the dragon? What's the thing that's so difficult to overcome? You might need to transform in order to beat it.
Capitalism.
It's a big ass dragon, man.
Why go after a small one?
Yeah.
I mean, so I'm not like one of these, like, capitalism is the only evil in the world, but I think the way we have created capitalism specifically, because, we have regulated capitalism, we have a really specific form of capitalism in the West. It doesn't put a lot of value in the things that I think are really important to the actual human experience, right? Like, it does want to turn us into things that create financial and monetary value. That's the main goal of capitalism, to create capital. And, my main goal is to help people create a deeper sense of self, inner muscles that will help them return to center when they're anxious and depressed. And capitalism doesn't really concern itself with that. In fact, it wants you anxious. It loves you anxious, because then it's got you right where it wants you, and you're going to just more easily, continue going to your 9-to-5er and cranking out the widgets and not, revolting, I guess. And so I think of true spirituality as being really countercultural, in the sense that, it begs us for a form of human economics where, if you're not doing well, I'm not doing well, where we really recognize that all of our destinies are mutually bound up, and that, it's part of what we get from the overview effect. We see the earth as a whole system that we're a part of. So I think when I was born, the American dream and the human story was work hard, get rich, retire early, and travel, and then you can enjoy your life. I hope that we're able to articulate a story for humanity over the next really soon, where we change that to say, the goal of life is to share, is to help others, is to grow mutually in community, is to love people as best you can. And, even a lot of people who call themselves Christians have strayed pretty far from that message. So, yeah, I mean, I think the dragon is very real. And the dragon has most of humanity where it wants it right now. And so, at the end of the day, meditation is an empathy and compassion machine, and so is virtual reality. They're both really good at helping us see through other people's eyes. We need to do a lot more of that together.
Yeah, it is. I mean, that's beautiful, and you're right. The empathy and compassion. I mean, in terms of meditation and all that stuff, it removes a lot of the hate. But there's teams, and let's go get those guys, and that it's a very ego-driven kind of thing that pushes progress forward in some ways. And it's interesting, but we kind of live in the belly of the beast, right? And trying to build a home in there, which is an interesting paradox, and put it that way, to be a part of it.
Yep.
And along the way, you've So with EvolVR, you have a number of different things that you offer. There's can you talk to me about some of the more like popular um, courses and events and opportunities that are out there for people that are interested to be a part of EvolVR?
Yeah. So, number one, if you go to our website, evolvr.org, which is evolvr.org, or to tripp.com, tripp.com, you'll see our schedule of events. So we have 3 or 4 live events every day of the week in one of the social VR platforms. A lot of them, like I said, are in Altspace. And I would just say to anyone who's listening to this, if you have a VR headset, go download Altspace. It's free. Find some of our classes and sessions, and just it doesn't even matter. Like, just show up to a couple of them. Like I said, we have 14 different instructors leading very different sessions. Some people react very well to all of them. Most people find 1 or 2 session leaders that really work well for them. So check those out. One way that's really nice, I think, to get your foot in the water, we have a program called Circles. We do them 4 times a year for 10 weeks each session. You sign up for 1 circle for 10 weeks. You meet with 10 people once a week for those 10 weeks for an hour and a half. And every time I supply a topic with questions, and there's a trained facilitator there. And the idea is to just like talk and hang out and meet new people. So you get randomly assigned a group of people who chose the same time as you from around the world. And you meet up 10 times to get deep. Like, you really talk about stuff. The topics are like, what do you think happens when you die? Or what does grace mean? Some of them are light. Some of them are like fun. What would you do if you won $10 million? And the whole point is to just, people don't have a lot of depth in relationship right now. I mean, they might have 1 or 2 people that they're close with. They might have some friends at work that they, mess around with, but we facilitate people going deep and creating, real relationships through those circles. And they are extremely popular. People sign up for them over and over and over again. We'll launch a new cycle of circles in, they'll probably start in late August, but we'll start to sign up sometime in early August. So that's a great place. People can sign up for that on our websites. And I would say, I mentioned Death Q&A a couple times. Even if you think you have a connection to that topic right now, I promise you, as a human being, you actually do. And, maybe it's that you lost a pet, 2 years ago, and that's still in you. Maybe your grandmother is getting close to that age. We're all going to go at some time, and it could be tomorrow. So it is amazing, the stories and sharing and processing that happens in that space. There's no bad event. Like, all of our session leaders are incredible. Some of them lead much more traditional meditations, and some of them much less traditional meditations. So really, I just invite people to explore. And if you haven't downloaded the TRIPP app, which is separate, this is that solo amazing experience. You can go to the Oculus Quest store. It's a free download to try out our trial experience. And there is a subscription, but it's extremely affordable compared to most meditation apps. It's like a couple bucks a month. And I think there's even like a lifetime that's under $40. The resources you will have access to through the TRIPP app that you can grab anytime you need them is unparalleled. We also have a free, one of these things, smartphone apps. It's a free TRIPP app you can get on the Apple or on the Android store. It's chock full of meditations, of these like gorgeous visualizations of meditations, all kinds of great stuff there. So there's a bunch of options for you.
That's awesome, man. That is awesome. Is there anything else you'd like to let people know about before you tell them how to get a hold of you?
Well, just that I to reiterate what I said before, which is that VR really needs you. Like, I'm a VR evangelist as much as I am a meditation evangelist. The thing that makes VR amazing, I think the killer app of VR is social, and it needs you. Like, it needs everyone to continue building that. So if you have yet to check out VR and you think it's like something for your kid or it's just for games, it's not. There is so much going on in there. Whatever you do professionally, whatever you do for a hobby, whatever you do just for fun, it's happening in virtual reality. You could find a community of people talking about it, doing it, building it. Check it out. It's amazing. And it's going to get to the point soon where everyone's in VR and you'll just have to plug into what is. But if you get involved right now, you can still help create what VR will be. So I think that's pretty cool.
That is pretty cool. Yeah. Creating the future together, which is pretty cool.
Yep.
Yeah. And if people do want to get a hold of you, how do they get a hold of you?
Well, probably the easiest way, like literally get a hold of me. You can find me hanging out at our sessions a lot in AltSpace. You can certainly email me through TRIPP, jeremy@trippinc.com. And TRIPP has 2 P's in it, of course, because it's the 21st century. And I love to just literally meet anyone and hear their story. So if you think you'd love to talk to me, please reach out and we can hang.
Beautiful. Jeremy, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's an absolute pleasure. Thank you for all the good work that you do. Much love and much appreciation.
Yeah, what a fun conversation. Thanks, Dylan.
Absolutely, brother. Take care. See you on the other side.
You bet.
Bye now.
Thank you for listening to the Heroes of Reality podcast. Check out heroesofreality.com for more episodes. While you're there, you can also take the Heroes quiz to find out what kind of hero you are. Or, if you have a great story and want to be on the podcast, tell us why your hero's journey will inspire others.